නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු වරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ.
Some things do not change for centuries, like the morning glow emanating from the golden crown of Sri Dalada Maligava, the temple of the tooth, the sacred relic of Lord Buddha, the ancient treasure of the kings of Sri Lanka.
Kandy itself is a geographically almost centrally located place, and it was selected by the ancient kings for its strategic location because it was surrounded by water, rings of mountains. And if you go and look at the World Heritage Site of Kandy, I mean, it was prescribed for three major reasons. One was that it had the authenticity of the sacred tooth-like relic of the Buddha, which was housed. Number two was the natural landscape. Number three was the multi-religious and multicultural nature of Kandy. So, I mean, this is a very strong thing. One wouldn't expect a hidden valley in some small island that displays, but it's cosmopolitan enough.
Just a few kilometers away from the city, standing atop the neighboring hill, another fairy tale structure surprises visitors. The story goes back to the 19th century. At the time, the island was known as Ceylon and was governed by the British Crown that had spread out through the Indian subcontinent. In May 1891, a foreigner from the Vatican, Ladislaus Michael Zaleski, came to his favorite hill station of Kandy merely to get some respite from the heat and dust of India. Soon after, news arrived from Rome that the Pope Leo XIII had entrusted Polish Archbishop with the mission of organizing the local Catholic Church in British India and Ceylon. The newly appointed apostolic delegate designated Kandy right away as the most appropriate site to form the Academia of Higher Studies for the local Catholic clergy.
Monsignor Zaleski came at the end of the 19th century, and he worked here for 25 years. At that time, Monsignor Zaleski represented the Pope, the Holy See, for three countries: India, Ceylon, and Burma also. And he had the title of Delegate Apostolic. It means he represented the Pope, the Holy See, and he should organize the Catholic Church here.
At the time of Monsignor Zaleski arrived in Sri Lanka, the British administration was firmly established at the time. Sri Lanka was the center point to the travelers from the west to the east, especially those who are traveling from England, perhaps via Suez Canal. Their first touch was Colombo, and every ship was touching Colombo. Therefore, tourism was booming at the time. Really speaking, this area, which is called Fort area, was occupied by the Portuguese in the 16th century and 17th century. So at the time there were very few buildings, but when the Dutch took over, They demolished all the Portuguese buildings, even the church was demolished and reconstructed according to their wish. When British took over, then also they constructed buildings according to their wish. So therefore what you see these days is the constructions of the British.
British rule in Sri Lanka brought to the tropical island the fever of industrialization. New coffee plantations in highlands needed regular transportation of coffee beans down to the harbours. That was the reason for the construction of the famous railway track between Colombo and Kandy, opened as early as 1867. It happened to pave the way for Kandy's tourism too. Kandy, the cultural capital of Sri Lanka, is known for its scenic tropical landscapes and calmer hill station climate. Nestled in the valley of the Mahavali River at the level of 465 meters above the sea, the whole city is embraced by lush greenery all around. Today, though, it is hard to imagine that these beautiful views conceal a violent and bloody history of several wars and conflicts in order to resist conquests of European invaders.
Importance of Kandy came especially with the invasion of the colonial powers, and it was a kind of a retreat which gave on the one hand protection, on the other hand sustainability of the very rich natural resources. And this was very important for the kings who were actually confronting the colonial powers, that are the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the early period of the British invaders. This not only was a safe haven, but also it was a very rich area to sustain its economy.
Kandy was a wilderness area a long time ago. During the time of the kings, they never touched the forest. They wanted to maintain the forest as it is, and some of the forests were termed forbidden forest, tahansi kale in Sinhala. So those were not allowed. I mean, no people were not allowed into the forest, and the kings knew the importance of the forest.
The Europeans, all three nations, tried to keep that kingdom landlocked. So what they wanted was the help of the king to harvest the cinnamon plantations, or cinnamon, what was earlier what was growing in the forest. Later the Dutch started regular plantations. Cinnamon was the bride around, they all danced. All Europeans tried to come here.
From the Portuguese occupation, there were several battles that were fought to invade the Kandy city. After a few months, they had to retreat. It was like Napoleon retreating from the Siberian regions when he invaded Russia. So they had the technology and the what you call the wit to utilize that against European powers only when the British managed to conquer all of the island was because some of the Kandian nobilities decided to side with the British, and that's the place where they could succeed. Otherwise they couldn't have succeeded either.
Royal Botanic Gardens Peradeniya is the oldest botanic garden in this country, started in 1821. Now when Peradeniya was established, actually the mother garden was Royal Botanic Gardens Kew. The British masters wanted Peradeniya Gardens to be the Kew of the East. I think in a way we are now almost Kew of the East. We have a herbarium, research team, a library and scientific research staff. So, but then the general public only sees the beauty of the gardens, the flowers. The beauty is just the outer crust of the bigger thing. All the plants in this country are preserved in this herbarium. We have 168,000 specimens. For example, this particular plant was collected from the Knuckles area in 1887. This is Henry Tryman's handwriting. Dr. Henry Tryman was here from 1880 to 1896. And during that time, Archbishop Zaleski visited Sri Lanka.
When guests from the Vatican came to Kandy for the first time, a famous local wonder, the Royal Botanic Garden Peradeniya, was at full blossom, leaving Father Zaleski, a botanist at heart, speechless. I have no words to describe it. It is the garden above all others. And then add 10 exclamation marks to that, we read in his diaries.
One of the most important collections of the herbarium is the collection of botanical illustrations done by 3 generations of artists, botanical illustrators, starting from Hermanus Dialis and then William Dialis, George Dialis, Alfred Dialis and others. So this was a fine illustration of a cucumber, and all the details of the flower and the fruits are all very nicely seen. When Archbishop Zaleski visited, it was one of the original Alices. Those illustrations are found in many parts of Europe, some in Paris and some in London. In the University of Warsaw Botanic Garden, there are some collections of botanical illustrations done in Sri Lanka, probably by Dialysis, and those were collected by Archbishop Zaleski, and those are now carefully preserved, and they are digitizing it, and they are going to make it into an online database.
The orchid is certainly a star attraction at the Royal Botanic Gardens Peradeniya. In fact, Kandy-type wet tropics where the clouds brush the mountain day and night are orchids' delight. Among over 22,000 orchid species, there is one with the curious nameplate Cymbidium Zaleskianum. The Lindenia Book of Orchids from 1903 dedicates the then classified orchid from Assam and Bhutan to Archbishop of Thebe, Ladislaus Zaleski. Only a few outsiders reach atop the Amphitheatre hill, overgrown with wild tropical vegetation. There, at the back of the seminary, lies an old botanic garden, or rather what remains of it today. Fathers and seminarians fondly call it Emilian, after Saint Emilian, the Spanish hermit from the wilderness. Today, only old trees can tell the story of Polish Archbishop Ladislaus Zaleski, who almost 120 years ago helped to clear the jungle with his own hands to make way for the seminary buildings and gardens.
I think I always admire him and respect him and remember him, though we have never seen him. We were, sort of years apart. But I can see, still I can visualize the person and his vision as we enjoy this atmosphere, this landscape, and the beauty of this whole place. Actually, nature beckons here a human heart, and it soothes and it prepares a person to meet God in their day-to-day life, in their studies. And this is all about philosophical and theological knowledge and wisdom that we are searching for, and that speaks a lot for who the person was, who had the vision to select a place like this and build in such a manner.
Being a first year student here in the National Seminary, entering these portals gave me a novel experience, because seeing this environment, whenever you feel low or whenever you are challenged by any problem, you can go to the Emilian or to the nature, then you are given the answer through nature.
You say this is a really beautiful place, amazing place. When we speak about the structure, especially the chapel, the granites, and when we look at the outside, the tree, the mist, now also you can have, you see, the mist and the greenery. So I love that. These things really inspire us some or other to experience God.
I visited this place before I became a seminarian as a small child when I was 8 years old, I think. So as I came in from this door, I can remember, I was just thinking, can I be a part of this institute or building? I don't know what is priesthood and the seminary, but today I can remember still. Now I am a part of this building, and I am in 4th year, so even these days I am thinking, this is my final lap, I am going to leave this place.
Papal Seminary in Kandy was initiated as early as 1893, years before its iconic buildings were constructed. Monsignor Zaleski put the best teachers in charge of the new academia, namely Jesuit fathers from Belgium's University of Leuven and Bengal in India. From then on, the seminary in Kandy acted as the alma mater for generations of ecclesiastic elites, and even today, Lankan and Indian young men continue to pursue here their higher studies of philosophy and theology.
Zaleski was a delegate apostolic for India chiefly, and Ceylon. And it was he really who wanted the papal seminary in Kandy, not in India at the beginning, in Kandy, on account especially of the caste system. Because once they came here, young people didn't care for the caste. And so they could study quite at peace, like that.
And also, I think there was a great tolerance by the people during that period. Some of the best schools were started by the Christian missionaries, and very upper crust society children went to these schools. So I'm not surprised that Kandy was selected for many reasons. The climate was good, people were receptive, and one should not forget that most of the priests who came from the West were very educated people. They were very concerned about the nature, about recording about the flora, fauna, religious practices, about the customs of the people, and they left fantastic records actually.
If you look at the Ampitiya Missionary School, the higher education is their main target, main primary target of this missionary college is the higher education for theological higher education, and for that subject, Ampitiya Missionary School is the #1 place in this country, and it is the, I think it is the pioneering institution in South Asia, I think, South Asia.
It was the National Seminary, or rather Papal Seminary at that time, in 1926, that awarded first time in Sri Lanka degrees, and that for that matter baccalaureate, licentiate and the doctorate. Actually, it was only 1942 that University of Peradeniya came into being.
In Kandy, though we call it University of Peradeniya, it is University of Kandy, and we have about community of about 30,000 people in the university village. So if you look at all the other centers of education in the country, Kandy is the main center, where the largest university, the best colleges in the country, of the religious schools and the big schools. So that is why one can say that Kandy is the hub of education in the entire country.
The Catholic Church started with the Portuguese missionaries at the end of the 15th century. I can see some sign of their presence here. We celebrate the feast of Saint Anthony, and there is a great devotion here. Not only from the Catholics, also Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, they come to pray also at the feast of Saint Anthony.
1500, the time that the Portuguese came to Sri Lanka, and there were certain the clashes between these civilizations, in the European civilization and the Eastern civilization. And during the clashes, they may have had loss of certain knowledge that we had in the past. But it also brought us new things to this country, the new religions to this country. New education systems emerge associated with the church, the Catholic Church at the time. Main school, the education system is run by the Catholic schools earlier. Formerly we call them Catholic schools and Buddhist schools.
Anywhere you go in Sri Lanka, people worship, whether it's Buddhist, Hindu, and there's a respect for other religions. There are intermarriages between religions and ethnic groups. We speak several languages. We have a multitude of races. I think this is one place where has actually entwined both the West and the East. like what Rabindranath Tagore tried to do, get the best of the West and the East. And these are, I think, dominantly represented. One is in Kandy, other one is in the Dutch fort of Gaul. We call it the dual parentage.
Archbishop Zaleski had truly made himself at home in Kandy. He called the Amphitheatre hill the Lithuania, and even brought here the replica of Saint Mary of Ostrabrama, the famous painting of Our Lady of the Gate of Dawn from Vilnius. Today, the same painting is celebrated in the Amphitheatre Parish Church, and the local Catholic community reveres Saint Mary of Ostrabrama as their beloved mother. Her cult brings together Sinhalese and Tamil parishioners with the abundance of their indigenous religious traditions.
I read about his life, and I would like to express my gratitude also in the name of His Holiness. He did a lot of works. His presence was very nice, and the people appreciated his contribution for a long time. 25 years. It is a good perseverance.
Monsignor Zaleski has done a marvelous service to the Christianity as well as to Sri Lankans as well, selecting Sri Lanka as the center for Asia and training local people instead of importing people from other countries was a very good vision. I have seen his name in 1892 Ferguson's directory, and there may be some other remains. So I think it is a good time for us to remember Monsignor Zaleski and his contributions to Sri Lanka.
He had this vision for the locals, the indigenous clergy one day, as it was being prepared even for the Indian clergy, for the Indian subcontinent. And then, of course, that time it was Pakistan, Bangladesh all together. And then naturally the seminary, as it moves forward, like this year is our 60th year of the National Seminary, and we had a pre-existence in the Papal Seminary for 61 years, and this is the 60 years here, 121 years long, and because there was a dream, I would say a theological dream and a philosophical dream of Monsignor Zaleski, which is being realized now.
Well, what we need is really men of prayer. People very often don't pray, even priests very often don't pray. We need men in touch with God. That's what we really need. If people are really in touch with God, so that means they see God, whether that man is a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Protestant, God is there. If I see God in that man, I respect the man.
Here we are taught something about the religion and the scripture, dogma. Our main task is to theologize, that means to compare with the society and give them something simple, something worthwhile. Today, if we look at the world, some they just run, and others they have their targets, aims, but those are mainly aimed at something, their personal gratifications, not anything else.
If we compare the outside person training to become a manager, to become an administrator or some other career, it will take about 4 years, 5 years. But all of us here who are aspiring to become priests, formation will take about 9 or 10 years. It is a big sacrifice, and after working outside and comparing my contemporary friends, this is a transformation. It is not with our own desire and our likenesses. It is not a career growth, but it is the Lord's way that we are going.
We really do not belong to a particular, though we have a nationality, though we speak a particular language. So naturally we are taken to different places to meet different people with one message. It is to enhance humanity, to give more meaning, a better life, and also a better future for people, not just to sort of live, eat and drink and live, but there is something more to human life. Like somebody walks through a garden and at the other end another person asks you, what did you see in the garden? So he may say, I didn't see much, I was in a hurry to walk through, I had some work to do and I was going through. But I say, well, there were some trees and all that, I just walked through. Another person might be asked the same question, who goes through the same path, and he might say, yes, I saw, it was really beautiful. And I saw the birds singing on the trees, and the flowers of all hues and colors. And then I really enjoyed it and I walked. I'm very relaxed as I get out of the garden. I think human life is also like that. Some walk in the first way, the others walk in the second way. I would invite all to walk in the second way.
In all likelihood, Monsignor Zaleski was the greatest Polish traveller of the 19th and early 20th centuries. He covered 280,000 kilometers in India and Sri Lanka alone. While travelling, he collected numerous Asian artifacts and over 32,000 botanical illustrations to his grand collection of Flore Tropicale. He would be delighted that many still can be seen at various museums in Poland and at Floretica, the dedicated website of the Botanical Garden of Warsaw University.